Now, I would like to four teenagers, two of whom experience autism. In her journey as a parent, Sangeeta co-founded Together Foundation along with her husband to help young people with autism to prepare for independent living. Together Foundation runs a sheltered workshop in Mumbai that offers earn and learn opportunity in baking, paper plate manufacturing, job work, managing a shop, data entry for financial institutions. Sangeeta believes that, like anyone else, people with autism also need to work towards a life of happiness as they grow older. Sangeeta Chakrapani is a TEDx speaker and enjoys writing about her experiences with people of all abilities. It's my pleasure to welcome you, Sangeeta. Thank you for being with us. Please.
So, good evening, everyone. And just like me, all of you would have heard a yarn story of the woodcutter and the three axes. And I think all of us are talking about it even 2 days after listening to that story. Even today, in the breakout room, something about that story is very attractive. And when I heard it, I was profoundly impacted because it took me back to a poem that I learned when I was in grade 10. It's a poem by Alfred Lord Tennyson about King Arthur. And what happens in the poem is King Arthur lies dying on the ground, taking his last breaths. And he has only one knight from the round table who is left. All the others are dead. This knight's name is Sir Bedivere. So he calls Bedivere and he tells him, I'm dying. And this is my sword, Excalibur. Take it and go to the lake and throw it, fling it into the lake. Bedivere is shocked because the Excalibur sword is famous, it is divine. It is a special sword. But he takes the sword, he goes to the lake, not once but twice. Both times he is not able to throw the sword. Something stops him, the temptation to keep the sword. He comes back to Arthur and he lies, I threw the sword. So Arthur helps Bedivere to overcome that transgression. Bedivere goes and finally throws the sword, comes back. After which Arthur gives his last and most poignant and most powerful lesson to Bedivere when he speaks these words. The old order changeth, yielding place to the new, and God fulfills himself in many ways. And then he says, more things are wrought by prayer than this world dreams of. In my own life, when I think about this poem, and now with the new infusion of thoughts and ideas that are coming to me through the learnings from Carl Koenig, I see in myself two archetypal images. I see two people. One is Arthur, who's perfect, who's infallible, who always does what needs to be done and does it perfectly. Noble, great, valorous. On the other hand is Sir Bedivere, who is also very courageous, very compassionate, but who is imperfect and is ready to repent. He is ready to transform. He is ready to go into being a better person. So I see myself, in myself, both. As I move forward in this new journey that lies ahead of me, And when I look back at my own personal journey, the universe has always conspired to give me what I really need at every major turning point in my life. So, 16 years ago, I gave birth to 4 children at the same time, of whom 2 were diagnosed with autism within 3 years of birth, and 2 are neurotypical children. The first 8 years was spent in raising my children, growing with them, living with them, laughing with them, sharing all our ups and downs. The next 8 years saw me laying the seeds for an organization that would work for people with autism. So when I started work, I did not start with trying to create a vocational center. My immediate vision was to create a group home right then, so many years ago. I had a vision of a place where people with autism would live in a community of give and take. I saw them in a community with people who would give them that extra support when needed, but with whom they would share a relationship of give and take that expresses it best, where the people with autism are also giving and the others are also giving. But I knew that I could not create it overnight. I had to start much smaller. So I put into place a work environment where I passionately believed would be a place where youngsters with autism would get the taste of adulthood. They would get the taste of what it is to be with adults as peers. So we had to make that transition from teachers to co-workers. And I looked at the very small details. For example, you walk into our center, you will see chairs scattered. You will not see them in a line. And when our adults walk in, our youngsters walk in, they come, they put their bags down, and they choose where they want to sit. It's a very small thing, but I was very particular about it, that when they walk in, nobody should tell them, you sit here, this is your place. That was absolutely forbidden. They had to get a chance to just come in and breathe out and look around them and just be for some time. For the first 15 minutes, nobody is supposed to tell them anything. Just relax, sit where you want, look at the trees. We have some trees around, fortunately. Look at the people around you. If you want to say hi, say hi. You don't want to say hi, you want to be quiet, you be quiet. And it was a constant plea to the parents who come to our center to drop off their children that please don't call this a school. School is for children, and they are not children. They are growing up, they have grown up. So instill in them an excitement of going to the workplace. So when they get ready in the morning, give them that small joy. Oh, you're going to work. Have you packed your bag? So we encourage them to bring a mobile phone. In fact, we try to make it compulsory that carry a mobile phone with you to work, so that when you want to make a call, you ask for permission and you make a call, just as we do when we are at work. So these are all the small things, apart from the fact that, as Lakshmi introduced me, we have a lot of work opportunities that we offer. But what about the invisible things? These are the visible things. The paper plate machine, the job work, the shop, the data entry, they're all visible. But what is invisible is when we touch their hearts, when we allow them to touch our hearts. And that happens only when there is a free flow. On the other hand, is also the need for some kind of structure, some kind of a code of conduct, without which it is impossible to live in any society. So, yes, we have been successful to some extent. But if you ask me, how do you go forth and create an environment where there is a code of conduct, there is freedom, right? And you're also instilling an awareness of responsibility. How do you dance this dance? So that's where Carl Koenig comes in. So he has come to me at a time when I desperately need him. I desperately need him to show me the way, because I am now ready for the third turning point in my life. And the universe has gifted him to me, and I have accepted him with all the love in my heart. I'm just waiting to learn and to grow. And I started thinking about how am I going to translate his philosophy into my life, into my actions, into my behavior, into my thinking. So I needed something tangible. I needed to create an example for myself. I needed to create an image for myself, which would remind me again and again that, Sangeeta, you need to be looking at this. You need to think about this. So,
video, right?
So basically, this was the concept. This was the image that I had created for myself. I will pause here for a second. Of the weighing scale. So there I am. I'm in the red scale. And there are my partners with disabilities who are in the green scale. And we are not in balance. So how do we achieve this balance? So what is happening is, in order to achieve this balance, I first have to start moving. Now, I'm already weighing myself down, as you can see, with the different tags that I have given myself of being a leader. I've given myself the tag of being a teacher. I've given myself the tag of being a mentor, of some kind of a messiah, a provider, whom everybody at Together Foundation looks up to. That here is Sangeeta to solve all our problems and to tell us what to do. And as I give myself the tags, I keep sinking down, 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 and down. And because I have sunk so low, my partners with disabilities are also out of balance only because I am not in balance. So the moment I start working towards creating balance in my life, my friends with disabilities automatically become stronger. They start blooming. They start developing the robustness that lies within them, but which will express itself only when I let go, when I decide to divest myself of so many tags and so many labels that I have given myself over the years. And gradually and gradually and gradually, I remove these tags, I remove these shackles, I remove these labels, these self-expectations which I have given myself. And when I rise and rise and rise, finally, over a period of time, a sense of balance slowly starts coming into being, where my friends with disabilities come into their own being only because I have finally let go. Yeah. So I was personally very happy when I had created this image for myself, which will help me to translate such a deep philosophy. I mean, I have just started. There is such a long way to go. So, how do I start working on something which is such a huge thinking, such a huge message? How do I start working on it 1%? So, in order to now start using this weighing scale, I have to go back into the past. I have to wear the spectacles of introspection which Carl Koenig has given me. And he is telling me, you need to revisit your past. You need to go back to the beginning. And only then can you go forward in your present. So when I wear these spectacles of introspection, I have to go back to the time I became a mother. I have to go back to the time when these 4 babies entered my life. And when these 2 children were diagnosed with autism, and it was a journey of absolute despair, absolute despondence, while trying to create a positive atmosphere, a happy atmosphere, whatever may be the challenges, both for the children with autism as well as my neurotypical children. Always there was this pulsating button in my life that said, keep your smile on your face, in your heart, whatever it may be. So when I go back into those years, and then I go back into the next set of 8 years, when I started working with so many more people, so many more families, so many more adolescents and adults with disabilities, I started looking at all those episodes, at different experiences that have happened over the past 16 years. I started looking at them with a new consciousness. Suddenly, my senses are on a high alert. And even the smallest of things are making an impression on me, which was never the case earlier. So, let me share with you a story about my daughter, Jayanti. I have been teaching her for the past 6 years to have a bath on her own. And it was during this period of lockdown that she finally managed to lock the bathroom door and start having her bath on her own. Following the steps. Is she opening the tap? Is she taking the scrubber? Is she scrubbing her body? So you can hear the sound. Again, is she pouring water? And I noticed that sometimes she was pouring the water too fast. Sometimes she was not using the scrubber at all. So I started monitoring her from outside the bathroom. I would give her the prompts. So just as the water would start flowing, I would say, come on, Jayanti, pour 1 mug of water. The moment I would hear the sound of 1 mug of water being poured, I would say, take the scrubber, pick up the scrubber. Then I would hear Jayanti dutifully rubbing the scrubber. So after I felt enough time had passed, I would say, pour water, Jayanti. And she would start pouring water. So this went on. And a few weeks ago, as usual, I was sitting outside the bathroom. Jayanti had gone in, she had locked the door, and there was no sound of flowing water. So it took me 2 minutes to realize that, the water has not started. So I was surprised. I said, what is this? Why can't I hear the water flowing? So I said, thank God. I mean, at that time, I really thank God that I had the wisdom to keep quiet at that time. That I kept absolutely quiet for 2 to 3 minutes, which were excruciating for me, but I don't know how that inner voice told me, just keep quiet. And after 3 minutes, I heard the sound of the toilet flushing. I was so upset with myself. I was so disgusted with myself. Imagine if I had opened my mouth at that time and said, Jayanti, open the tap, she would have answered my call instead of answering nature's call. I would have interfered with her capacity for resolving a need, which can happen to anybody when they go in for their bath. And here I was intruding in her most private space and trying to run her life for her. So I took around 10 minutes to get over this. And I just told myself, Sangeeta, just stop it. Stop what you're doing right now. Stop trying to run Jayanti's life for her. Let her be. Let her have her bath peacefully. She uses a scrubber. She doesn't use the scrubber. Leave her alone. You've taught her, let her be. So how do I solve the problem? Because the mother in me, the teacher in me, the founder of Together Foundation is still there. So once a week, Jayanti wears a gown, a maxi or a nightgown, whatever you call it. And she sits on a chair in the bathroom because I refuse to see her without her clothes. I go inside and then I tell her, okay, Jayanti, since she's fully clothed, she's wearing a nightie. She takes a body scrubber. She inserts her hand inside her gown and scrubs herself and scrubs her elbows and scrubs the back of her neck. And she has what is called a dry cleaning bath, which happens on Saturday or Sunday. So that if at all on those 6 days, she has not had a proper bath, I try to make up for it on one day of the week so that hygiene issues don't crop up on a larger scale. Why I'm telling you this is that the parents normally argue back with me. How do I know what she's doing in the bathroom? How do I know what my son is doing in the bathroom? You will never know what he's doing in the bathroom. There is no easy solution to this. We have to give them their space and we have to let go. So in order to touch their lives and make it better, first I have to improve as a person. I have to become wiser. I need to incorporate this knowledge into my life, right? In fact, around the same time that this episode happened, Jayanti showed me another side to her personality, which again ties up with what I am trying to talk about here. So it was late in the evening, and two of the children who are neurotypical, Jayashri and Krishna, they had gone down to play. And Lakshmi and Jayanti were at home. Lakshmi, who also has autism like Jayanti, she was listening to music. And Jayanti was on her iPad. She was playing games. And I could hear some unhappy sounds emanating from Jayanti. So I came out of my room, and simultaneously my husband came out of his room. And both of us looked at each other. And he said, let me go and check. So he checked and he came back and he was smiling. He said, Jayanti is angry with her iPad, Sangeeta. The video is buffering, so she's getting upset. So I said, okay, fine. So I called her out. I said, Jayanti, do you need help? Do you want my help? So she showed me a thumbs up. I'm fine. So I decided to be very kind to Jayanti. I decided to be very sensitive to Jayanti. And I thought to myself, it's so quiet because Jayashri and Krishna have gone down. So when you have people with autism, the sound of silence is very loud. And it is very, very difficult to take. So I thought I was adding color into Jayanti's life. And I said, Jayanti, why don't you sit here? So much to my astonishment, Jayanti, who has been docile since birth, has always done what is told to her. She just signaled very mildly with one hand. She pointed to that room to show that she wanted to go there. So I could not believe it. I was not ready to believe it that Jayanti would say that. So I repeated my instruction, request, whatever you may call it. Jayanti, sit here. So it came back, the response. She was holding her iPad in her right hand, and like a traffic constable with the left hand, she just did that to show that she wants to go there. So one, I was shocked. Two, I was happy. Why was I happy? Because in a matter of a few seconds, Jayanti had taught me that she has grown up and that she is ready to occupy space on her own and that she does not need me to be her shepherd. Because ultimately the Lord is our shepherd, let us never forget. Psalm 23 of the Bible. So she says, she showed me that I have grown up and I'm happy being there. So I automatically responded, Jayanti, go sit where you want. And she went. So this was, again, when I look back at that experience, this is letting go of one more shackle. One more shackle of thinking that we are being kind, thinking that we are being sensitive, instead of being alert to what the other person wants. You know, to have that higher consciousness where you're able to, when that consciousness is within you, you don't even need Jayanti's action, you know. Automatically you will let her be. If she wants to sit with you, she will sit. If she doesn't want to sit with you, she will not sit. Right? And New Year's has just passed. I mean, we've just crossed New Year's. So on the 31st of December, there was a there was a New Year's party in our building, the building where I live, which had been organized by the teenagers, by the youngsters, only for themselves. So these two children, the neurotypical ones, my children, Jayashri and Krishna, they came up to me and they said, there's a party. So I said, wow, you go. But automatically a debate begins. Should Lakshmi and Jayanti go for the party? If they go for the party, will they enjoy themselves? Or will they be bored? And then there are no chairs downstairs. So where will they sit and what will they do? And it's one torturous discussion which starts inside my mind that had begun. The moment they said that they were going down for a party, this internal dilemma began for me. By the time I could resolve it, this daughter of mine, Jayashri, came back to me and she said, you know what? They're asking me to wear a sari. I said, wow, I'll help you. I'll help you to wear a sari. But at the same time, again at the back of my mind, there was a bead of worry, a small bead of worry. Because Lakshmi loves to dress up. Unlike Jayanti, who's more a self-contained person, Lakshmi is more gregarious. She likes to be with people in her own way, no doubt. She likes to dress up. She loves Indian clothes. She loves to wear earrings. So I started worrying. Oh my God, when Jayashri comes out dressed in her sari, how will Lakshmi feel? So I started solving the problem. So I had two solutions. Solution one, tell Lakshmi, Lakshmi, come on, change your clothes. I'll help you choose a nice pair of clothes. Go for the party. Another was to give Lakshmi something really exciting to do at home, which will divert her mind. So since she loves music, I organized an online music program for her to attend. And I was working on both simultaneously. And I went up to Lakshmi and I said, Lakshmi, why don't you go for the party? Come, let's choose a nice pair of clothes. And we went up to her cupboard and I took out a salwar kameez for her. She turned and looked at me and she said, no. And she took those clothes from me and dumped it inside her cupboard. And I think she was also a little worried that I'm going to pressurize her. So she changed into a night shirt for better effect. So by the time I could digest what Lakshmi had done, she moved out of the room and she quickly went to the table where I had set up that online music session for her. And I think out of respect for me, she sat in front of it. She wore those headphones and she listened to it for some 2 to 3 minutes. And then she pressed that red button which says leave. She pressed it and she came out from the dining table where I had set up. She put on the fan. She pulled a rocking chair under the fan. She sat in the rocking chair and comfortably rocked herself up and down, and she was watching the world go by. All this entire thing happened in the space of around 20 to 25 minutes. And again, my daughters had taught me several lessons in the space of a few minutes. So one, Lakshmi had taught me very effectively that she did not want to attend the party. It was not her scene. 2, neither did she want the music program. She wanted to do what she normally does at that time of the evening, which is to relax in the rocking chair. She had also taught me, I understood it with a shock that day. And I told my husband, I said, CP, I call my husband CP. His name is Chakrapani, so the short form is CP. I told him, CP, so many years have passed. Even they have accepted themselves. We still haven't. When are we going to grow up? And when Jayashree came out of her room, looking very pretty, dressed in a pink sari with matching earrings and a bangle and a watch, she was looking so sweet. Lakshmi immediately jumped up from her rocking chair, went up to Jayashree, and she petted her like a puppy. You know, she stroked her sari, she tapped her earrings. You know, she was examining her the way you will look at a doll in a shop. See, this doll is so pretty. Full of love. Her expression was totally at peace with herself when she saw Jayashree saying bye and going out. So here are these two siblings, these two individuals who are naturally adjusting with each other, with their varying opportunities, with their differing expectations of life, their differing goals, their differing dreams. Here they were going into a natural flow, like how a river goes amongst the rocks and the stones and finds its path. Here I am trying to fix a solution like a mathematician. 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. 4 minus 2 is equal to 2. I wanted to put the puzzle's pieces in their place and feel satisfied that I have solved the problem. And Lakshmi will now live happily ever after. There is no happily ever after. There is nothing like that. And as I read this book, I have just begun, Seeds of Social Renewal. The community that Carl Koenig describes to us is of a community that is not perfect. It's of a community of people who are on a constant journey of loving each other, understanding each other, crossing hurdles as individuals, as a group, maintaining their individuality and yet being able to merge with another. Right? So this is the community that Carl Koenig talks about. It has nothing to do with happily ever after. It has nothing to do with a jigsaw puzzle. It cannot be computed. It is not a maths sum. So if I have to internalize this in my life, and if I have to move forward, I realize that one of the first things I have to do is remove the platform on which I am standing. Right now, I have erected a platform on which I am standing, where I am constantly the provider, constantly telling people what to do and how to do and solving problems. I need to come down and stand on Mother Earth with all these people with and without disabilities who are my fellow citizens, to whom this Mother Earth has given the sun and the stars and the flowers and the trees and the plants. She's given it to all of us, not only to them and not only to me. The moment I understand that I am inhabiting this earth as one more person with or without a disability, then I can start offering my services without having to climb on a platform. This is what I feel. This is what I am learning at this point of time in my life. And let me tell you, the journey ahead is not going to be easy. The journey ahead has a lot of potholes because autism is a formula which has not been cracked. So there will come times when the people around me may not behave the way I think they will behave. Sometimes the behaviors may not get moderated. Sometimes the rages may continue. Sometimes coexistence can become very difficult. What will I do then? What kind of solutions will crop up then? I don't know. But I know only one thing, that Carl Koenig has given us a philosophy that will help us to face these challenges as equals, as in a atmosphere of coexistence. Because his philosophy appeals to both the heart and the mind. To the rational, it appeals to the spiritual. It appeals to both. It lends itself to both. So in my life, I see his philosophy like an essential oil, like a drop of essential oil, whose fragrance is all around the atmosphere, but you cannot see it. It is within me. It is in every nook and corner of my home. It is in my garden. It is among the birds on the trees. It is among the plants, among the butterflies. It is everywhere in the atmosphere. But I cannot see it. It is not something which can be seen. It is something which has to become a part of the air I breathe. It has to become a part of the way I live. It has to be something natural, not something where I think, oh, I have to do this. It has to become something which flows from me naturally and creates an atmosphere of harmony which others can also live in. So it lies in me. The solution begins from me. It is no longer about repairing another person. It is no longer about making somebody better. So now it's a dialogue. It's a two-way process. So when there is a challenge in life, when there are difficulties, when these potholes come as I move forward, it will not be about them anymore. It will be about us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sangeeta.
This was a holiday that the children had taken together.
Beautiful.
And who was who?
The child, the girl in the rocking that hammock is Lakshmi. The boy is Krishna. And on the left-hand side, you had, there are two girls on the left-hand side.
Yes.
One who's holding the hammock and one who's on the outer edge. The one on the outer edge is Jayanti, you know, with the super serene face. And the one inside is Jayashree. It's very easy to make out Jayanti based on her expression, because she is wise beyond her years. She's wise beyond everything. It's an experience to be a parent to her. It's an experience to be associated with her in any manner.
Actually, it is beautiful what you have shared, Sangeeta, as an enormous example of this inversion, the process of change from being an educator to being a social therapist or a life sharer. And what is so amazing is that what is very, very wonderful, I find, in your sharing is that you have experienced yourself these steps. You have found them yourself. I'm not saying it was easy, but I am saying you yourself have found all these steps, and the things with your own morality, you have questioned things, and your own morality has all the time brought these new gateways in front of you where you said, "No, this doesn't work anymore. It's time for a change." And that is so incredibly visible in your sharing. It's an amazing illustration for what we are trying to do here in our conference. Thank you so much.
Permeate me, that in me may arise a helper of humankind, a server of sacred things, selfless and true. May wisdom shine through me, may love glow within me, may strength permeate me, that in me may arise a helper of humankind, a server of sacred things, selfless